Welcome to Uncommon Sense, where we do our best to make it common again. I'm your host, Adrian Alquist, and today I'm joined by Virginia de la Lastra, who is a medical doctor and an infectious disease specialist in Chile. And it's very impressive. And she's a Chestertonian, so we're so glad to know her. And she connects Chesterton ideas to the medical world. And she spoke at the last year's virtual Chesterton conference. And I was helping on the back end, and it was really fun to see her talk. And she just lightened up the mood because everyone was virtual. We were not in person. And she gave a talk called Paging Dr. Chesterton. And I'm going to ask her about this. She's also an artist, and we have her do art for Gilbert Magazine. So if you are a member of the Chesterton Society, you would have seen some of Virginia's artwork, and it's amazing. So just a very impressive person and very joyful. I'm very honored to have you here. How are you, Virginia?
Hi, Adrian. How are you? Hi, everyone.
Yeah, I'm very good. I want to ask you about your talk because it was very impressive how you connected medical ideas or you actually connected Chesterton to the medical world. Because he has some insights, which is weird because, Chesterton is a humanitarian. You wouldn't expect him to have such insights, but you made it, come to light. So let me ask, so Chesterton's wisdom was applicable to the medical world, and Chesterton realized a big problem in the world, right? So he has a diagnosis, you said. So what is Chesterton's diagnosis?
Okay, it's just that, he was a humanist, but we are all humans. Even, all the science are based on, are with humans. So, and the thing about Chesterton is that all his philosophy can be applied to literally everything, because everything, you cannot avoid philosophy, even in the science, you always have it, it's always there. And we were suffering from stuff in the medical field, at least that's what I know of, is that the thing we were suffering most was not, Chesterton points it really well, because he says that we were suffering not of the assertion of falsehoods, but of the endless and irrepressible repetition of half-truths. And that's the problem, because he also says that the whole truth is generally the alley of virtue, and that a half-truth is always the alley of some vice. So that's why we're dealing sometimes when we have the narrow thinking in every field, and also in microbiology, which is my specialty.
Yes, and I remember learning that the devil deals in half-truths. It's and just like poison, even a bad thing has a little bit of good in it. That's why it's so deceptive, because it looks good, and because there is maybe some good in it, but it's the poisonous part that's going to kill you. That I completely agree with that. That makes sense. So if Chesterton, his cure for our problem is the truth, how does he define truth?
Yeah, well, the thing about half-truth is that, half-truths don't make us happy. We need the whole truth, because Chesterton actually says that there is a whole truth of things, and that in knowing it and speaking it, we are happy. But it's a very good question, Adrian, because how does Chesterton define that truth? And he actually says that a truth is a fact with a meaning. But we have to be careful, because it has to be with a well or correctly discerned meaning. It cannot be, with a meaning, whatever, because a fact with a meaning can also be a lie. So, and to discern the meaning, we need both imagination and reason. And actually, this is tricky. Maybe Dale's going to kill me, because I'm going to quote C.S. Lewis, and because but he states it so well. He says that imagination is the organ of meaning, and reason is the organ of truth. But imagination always comes first, and that's the trick there, because since before something can be true or false, it has to mean something. And so imagination always comes before, and reason is the judge. It will judge if that meaning is truth or false.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I remember you talking about how you can't just have facts and statistics. And if you just have that, you're not going to convince anyone. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, well, facts are not the same as truths. Some facts have meaning and some facts do not have meaning. And that's the hard part, because the human mind is always looking for meaning. So it's really hard just in the sense that actually it is impossible for the human intellect to hear a fact as a fact. So if I tell you we all Chileans, I don't know, we get up at 12 or 11 a.m., most people are going to think these Chileans are, I don't know, lazy, or maybe whatever. They're always going to apply some meaning to it. But it can be, we are not giving you the reasons. So you don't know. It's a fact, but it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. It could be because you're working until 4 a.m, Yeah.
And it could be that, I don't know, I work in my pajamas and then I take, it can be so many different things.
Yeah.
But we usually apply meaning to facts. And that is sort of, it is tricky, and it can be a lie. And so he warns about the danger of statistics, because statistics, they deal with facts, not with truth.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly.
They never.
That's great. Yeah, I want to remind people before we continue that this would be a good time to sign up for our conference that's coming up. I've talked about this a lot, but this is relevant material, because this is what Virginia talked about at last conference. And just, I want to remind people, go to chesterton.org/conference for more information and to register. If you're a member, you can listen to Virginia's talk that she gave last year, and it's on the member dashboard. So it's just great material. It's a good teaser for this conference. But the other thing is, I want to make sure that you can see some of Virginia's art. So I'll try to either put this in the video or in the description. And if you become a member, you'll be able to see your art in the Gilbert magazine. So sorry for the sidetrack, Virginia. How does Chesterton help teach the truth then?
Well, actually, Chesterton, it is funny, because he says how not to teach it. He says a lot about how not to do it. And the thing about Chesterton teaching the truth is that, first one is, these are the questions that I made myself. Well, should we use reason? But Chesterton actually is against it. And it's kind of weird. You say, why wouldn't you? And he says reason is always a kind of brute force. Those who appeal to the head rather than the heart, however pallid and polite, are necessarily men of violence. And when I read that, I was like, what is this? And he continues and he says, we speak of touching a man's heart, but we can do nothing to his head but hit it. So reason for Chesterton, he's saying that, of course, you can use it, but it's violent, main reason. So the thing about Chesterton is that he teaches the truth in a way that does not separate truth, beauty, and the good of the truth. So if you separate them, and actually he was talking with it is written down when he was talking with Father Brown. Actually, the father was Father Brown, who inspired Father Brown, about how some people can make even any truth look like the most odious falsehood, because truth without charity is horrible. It can be horrible. So
but I agree, and that's why Chesterton says the insane man, I think he says the insane man has not lost his reason, he's lost everything except his reason. So if you just have reason, you can convince yourself of a lot of bad things, because you have no way of verifying your premises, your assumptions of your argument. That's the problem in reason, is you can't prove your assumption, otherwise it wouldn't be an assumption. And so you need something else. You need imagination, you need faith. That's what Chesterton points out too. It's an act of faith to assume your reason has any bearing on reality at all. I'm botching the quote, usually, but that's I completely agree. Yeah. So
but Chesterton does not attack reason. Chesterton defends reason, but he attacks reason when it leads to unreason, like reason working in the void, without any first principles, without charity or without humor. And I love that sentence in Orthodoxy, because he said charity and humor to help you see the world in a different way. Gotcha. So reason is not the first thing that Chesterton would get to, but Chesterton is always keeping in mind that there's a whole of truth. And the whole of truth, reason cannot reach the whole truth on its own because it's too big for it. And some things are reasonable of the truth, and some things are barely reasonable, but not quite. So there's some part that reason cannot get to that easily. But the way that that Chesterton teaches to get there is that, the best way to teach the truth is, and I remember that at the conference last year, because some people were writing, how did you say it? Because the best way to teach it is not to tell it, at least not right away. And some people were arguing in the chat last year in the conference saying, what, not tell it? And well, yes, not right away, and I strongly agree with that, because truth is one of those secrets which are too good to be told. And Chesterton says that truth is sacred. And if you tell the truth too often, nobody will believe it. So telling it is the last resort. And you don't want to take the joy of hunting for the truth of someone. You don't want to give it, because truth is fun, truth is beautiful, truth is good. And so that you want to train people how to reach it. But first, they have to want it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I mean, at first, I imagine people don't like it because they're going to say, no, you should always be telling the truth. Well, yes, you should never tell a lie. That's true. But our goal is always to present the truth. It's true, but that doesn't always translate into, giving it away in a lackluster way, in a unattractive way. And I think Chesterton agrees with that. That's why he was so interested in mystery novels, because in a mystery novel, you don't give the truth away right away. It's revealed at a very crucial point. And that's why it's intriguing. That's why that's why we like mystery novels. So I agree with that. Yeah.
But he says actually that the best way to tell it is as a surprise. And mystery novels are a surprising ending. That's why we love it. And we hate people who give that away, and just to send those people to hell. And I agree with that too.
The lowest ring of hell.
Yes. Traitors. But yes, so it should be told as a surprise. And I actually think that jokes are a very good way of telling it, because the joke actually makes you also enjoy the truth, as experience it. When you laugh at something, you see the nonsense, you see the truth, and you see something nonsensical, and it takes you by surprise, because if it wouldn't take you by surprise, you wouldn't laugh. So the experience of truth is as important as reason, the taste and see. So the truth is as essential as reason, but the tasting should precede reason.
Great. Yeah. Yep. It makes total sense. So you ask, or you have you break down Chesterton's way of teaching the truth into three things, right? And can you go over those three things?
Yeah, well, Chesterton teaches the truth in three different ways, and I sort of made it like steps. First you need to see things as they should be seen, and here we have wonder. How do we see the world around us? Then after we see the things how it should be said, it should be seen, then we have the concepts we should have in the way that we should have them, and then we can think about them. And then once we start thinking correctly about them, we can start feeling about Chesterton teaches how to feel about things, how they are, the emotion we should have towards them.
Right. So it's seeing things that they should be seen, thinking things that should be thought, and then feeling things as they should be felt. That's cool. I like how you break that down. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the first one is seeing things that they should be seen. So the starting point of this is that we need to see things as they really are, because we're not seeing them as we really are. We think we're seeing them as we really are, but we are not, because everything we see has a meaning. And but because of familiarity, we are not as astonished at the universe anymore. We are taking it for granted. So the things we have to do right now is to make our eyes young again, because Chesterton says that we have seen and grown old, and our eyes grew old with us. So we cannot wonder at them. And Chesterton says that blindness comes with familiarity, and that a man can get used to terrible things. He can even grow accustomed to the sun. And that's our problem. So we laugh when a child, looks at an excavator and is like on the window looking at an excavator or a truck. But that's the right response to it. We laugh at something which is totally correct. It's an amazing excavator.
Yeah, and that's why Chesterton's all about seeing things in a new light that we're used to. He writes his story about Innocent Smith, who in his novel Man Alive, where Innocent breaks into his own house, and he breaks in with someone he didn't know that it was his house, but he finds out, oh, he's just breaking into his own house. Why would you do that? And it's because he wants to see his belongings in the perspective of a criminal who sees all the valuables. So it's a great story. And
I love his bag when he brought everything because of the wrong reasons. When he bought the wine bottles because they had different color caps.
Oh yeah.
Collecting them.
Yep. Yeah. So you talked about seeing things as they should be seen.
In order to see things, as they should be seen, Chesterton actually says that here's when we do need imagination, because and he says that what is truly wanted is that truly godlike imagination, which makes all things new, because all things have been new. So the function of imagination is, and he says that it's not so much to make wonders facts, but to make facts wonders.
Oh, so that's a good.
Through imagination, we discover the meaning of things, new meanings of things. That's the whole,
and it's cool how you combine the ideas of seeing things with imagination, and when you're talking about godlike imagination, for God, seeing is imagining. I mean, it's one and the same, because what he imagines is seen. It's created, right? And in Genesis, he says God saw that it was good. God saw that it was good, and and they was good. So that's really cool, and I think you're absolutely correct. So the first step is seeing things as they should be seen, and then it's thinking things as they should be thought. Can you go into that idea, unless you're still talking about the seeing thing? I didn't mean to cut you off.
We can go to the other point. Actually, the point about seeing things as it should be seen is that since imagination deals with an image has limitations. So you are defining, sort of. You know what the thing are, but you also know how the value of the thing, because you're seeing it as new. Sorry. So because you're seeing it and you are considering something which is not present, now there is a thing, and now you can start to think, because you cannot think if there are no things to think about.
Yeah.
And so imagination is essential to good thinking, and that is how we are leading to the other part, which is thinking things that should be thought, because Chesterton also says that the study of the smallest fact can lead us to the highest truth. So how can we connect things? And Chesterton says that the aim of thinking is to connect things, and few things are so important as thinking. In fact, yesterday I think I read an essay about Chesterton, and he was telling about the value of doing nothing, because sometimes we have to know when to do nothing, because there's nothing we can do, and what we can do is to start to think. And nothing to do is like, when we are so desperate that you want to do something. He was talking about the war, how many people wanted to help, but there was nothing they could do, and he was telling that they could spend their time thinking, which would be very good. But think about thought is crucial, because if you think wrong, you go wrong. Bad thinking can be deadly. And that's what Chesterton actually deals with. He teaches how to think. And so the first thing we have is that we have problems with definitions. And we have that in the medical field as well. You just go and read a medical article, and it's probably you'll find some problem with definitions. And that's it's really worrying. And I have several concerns about it, because Chesterton also says that evil always takes advantage of ambiguity. I have always a hard time pronouncing that word.
I know, ambiguity. Yeah. It's because it's not an easy word. I can't pronounce the word cheerfulness, and that's a word in Chesterton's prayer, in our prayer for the intercession of G.K. Chesterton. I cannot cheer.
I cannot pronounce it well. My phone always tells me that I pronounce it terribly. But there you go. But the thing is that a vague term always, I'm going to use that one. Evil always takes advantage of vague terms. So, and that's fun, because that's what I teach my students sometimes with medical articles. I just, start collecting them, and we play the game, find the vague term, and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, we have that problem all the time, especially in politics and economics. I mean, capitalism, that I think Chesterton writes a whole essay about the problem of defining capitalism. You can read that in The Hound of Distributism. And yeah, it's absolutely true. But I like the idea also of wasting time with God. I forgot who said that, but that goes to your point of doing nothing. You want to waste time with God, which is a weird idea, because, waste time. But no, I mean, it's not the bad version of wasting. It just sends the idea that it'll maybe feel like wasting at first, wasting time, but you're actually spending your time the best way. And it's thinking and praying. So yeah.
You're too good. I just waste time, and I love it. I look at the ceiling, and I never know if I'm wasting or I'm thinking, or
Yeah.
When you're in blank, sometimes you have no idea what you're doing. Well, at least that's with me. I'm a mess. But
no, it's true. I mean, Plato talks about how the point of civilization, or a city, a society, is to increase leisure time, is to maximize leisure time. And we seem to progress towards things that will give us more leisure time, and then we end up more busy or busier. So what's the it's a weird problem that we have in our world, is we create things that should make our lives easier and reduce our work, but we end up working more. It seems like nowadays people work a lot more. And so yeah, it's paradoxical. And at a certain point, we have to make a conscious decision. It's an act of the will to start doing nothing at a certain point. Yeah,
it's hard. Well, sometimes it's easy, but anyway. But well, in this point, when Chesterton teaches how to think, you cannot avoid finding philosophy everywhere, and that actually is what happens to us, because when I start, find the vague term, and we start reading some articles, some extract from them, you always find something interesting, how to prevent something. Well, now we are fed up with the prevention stuff, and I know, I'm sorry, very sorry, but
no,
the thing is that some of the things that doctors say, and the people who work in healthcare say, that we can prevent an infection, a disease, whatever, by expanding information campaigns among whatever is your target group. And that actually, this solution is the most Platonic one I ever read. But if you don't know Plato, you're not going to recognize that. There's an evil, and the solution to that evil is more information. And that if you don't, so when you start thinking, you start seeing all these little, extracts from different philosophers inside a medical text, or anywhere in any field, I guess. But so the point is that there's a mistake, because mostly they assume that the elements of our soul, of the people, are ordered. The rational, the spirited, and the appetites are all neatly ordered. But when I start, talking about this with my students, they usually say, "But no, wait. Sometimes I'm on a diet, and I ate a huge chocolate," and so that's where we are kind of getting in contact with a wider truth. now we get to the wheel. So the thing is that Chesterton always says, and that is what we are dealing with right now, is the narrow thinking, because he always said that what ruins the world is not the the knowledge of the expert, but the ignorance of the expert. Because whenever the expert is not extraordinarily learned, he's extraordinarily, unlearned or ignorant. And the thing is that sometimes we know a lot about infectious diseases, but we know very little about, human beings. They have not got ordered souls. So if we do information campaigns, well, maybe we'll have an impact, maybe not, but you should study, Plato, because Plato says that, the solution to an evil is, sort of information.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, it's funny how sometimes, the medical world will know a lot. I mean, we rely on them for so many things, but sometimes just a small bit of ignorance will torpedo the whole situation. Like I think it was the bubonic plague, the Black Death. It was the doctors were not washing their hands because they just didn't know that how important it is to wash their hands between looking at patients, and that there's an estimation that it killed hundreds of thousands of people just because they didn't wash their hands. And it's like, I mean, it was an ignorance. It wasn't out of malice, but there was an ignorance there. So it's just very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but they are assuming that if people knew the good, they would instantly do it. Mm-hmm. And that's why sometimes people are, sort of, angry because, they should do whatever. Now that we have the virus that should not be named, because I hate the name now. I cannot even,
This actually might be a good time to mention the class that you were teaching called the Covey, right? The Covey. And so the main character is Covicius. So this is obviously based off the Odyssey. And it was very funny when you told me it, and we have a graphic. I'll try to put it in here, but can you explain what this class is?
It's just that I'm sorry, but I work with the C virus, and so I'm a little bit set up with it, sort of the COVID virus, the COVID religion, and whatever. So, but the thing is that I have to give a class to my medical students, so I gave it like I made up the Covey, and I started, the wonder virus that, that destroyed the sacred city of Wuhan. And of course, Covicius set sail from Bat, his homeland, in search of, I don't know why he said, but I made my chant first, and I drew it Covicius. So he's, going all around the world, or maybe putting it upside down like it is right now, or I don't know how we are, but in search of getting back to his homeland Bat. I don't know. I know that there are several theories about how it started, but in my chant of the Covey, it started with, Covicius setting sail from Bat, his homeland.
From Bat, yeah. I like that. That's a very clever way of teaching it. I like that. Yeah.
And got a more modern name, which I think is boring, but I like way better Covicius.
Covicius, yeah. It's so clever, yeah. Anyway, you were saying about the how the medical world, what were you saying?
We found philosophy by thinking, and we found philosophy inserted in the medical journals. And you know what? And the funny thing is that we also found theology. And that's the last thing we were looking for. And we found it because, every time I ask my students, okay, if they're going to do information campaigns, what would you tell people to avoid, getting hurt? And they all started, threatening them. Like we're threatened right now with the news, so it's like the same thing. If you don't do, you're going to die, or you're going to go to the ventilator, or you're going to be, I don't know. So they all started, threatening them. You could get infected with the rest of your life. So actually, that's when I tell them that they were doing exactly the same thing that the ill-taught religion used to do. You're threatening people with hell. And then we got to hell. And they said, but hey, Dr. De Lastra, this is real. Yeah, but the other hell also is real for other people. And that's when we start comparing hells. And you might laugh because you might think, well, but the infectious hell is not eternal. Well, it depends on your worldview, because some people actually think and believe that, this life is all they got. So if you get infected or you get something, then you are infected, forever and ever in their worldview. So, and we start comparing health, which is quite fun. And
No, that's a very good point, though. I mean, if this is all we have, then you're going to try to protect that life as best you can, and that actually can be destructive in the long run. I mean, not always, but sometimes you will go to such great lengths that you actually are a burden to the people around you, and you don't contribute to society. I mean, you can lock yourself up forever. I mean, that's a legitimate thing you can do, and never interact with the outside world. And obviously, there are extenuating circumstances. I'm not saying there wasn't with COVID, but this is a good time to really analyze what you think, and the practicality of like what kind of death rate will you accept. This is something I asked people, and they didn't know. I mean, like, you have the seasonal flu, right? That kills people, that kills a number of people, maybe not as much as COVID, but will you accept that? And will you not, will you still interact with the outside world, even with the risk that you could die from that, right? Or you could die from breaking your leg, or falling off a ledge when you go outside. I mean, it's just it's true, though. I completely it's yeah.
Well, that's where here I can tell you about the Covey and the Iliad. I usually look at, because medicine cannot tell you how you should live. Medicine can tell you how you can cure yourself, and the probabilities about getting hurt if you do some things, but it cannot have any certainty. But medicine should not tell you how you should live. That's a choice, and that's freedom. And actually, I was thinking, and we were talking earlier about how now if you take care of yourself too much, Achilles would not stand it, because Achilles got a choice. He was made to choose between a glorious and short life in Troy, or between a long one and obscure one. And guess what he chose? He chose the glorious one. So now, because of COVID, we're not allowed to be like Achilles. I don't know. Maybe I want to be like Achilles. Why I'm not allowed to be like him and have a short and glorious life? And I think, it's a choice. And doctors should not meddle in that that choice. That's for the philosophy of each person you have. And a lot of doctors will not agree with me. I'm sorry, but I do believe in freedom. And medicine cannot, tell you what value should you place in freedom, or in having a glorious life, or in having going to work. So those are things that are out of the scope of the medical field.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, because I think a lot of these medical professionals, they want to be able to guide people outside of the realm of just the medical statistics, right? They want to be able to give their philosophy and give their guidance about things outside of the medical world, but they don't, unfortunately, have the expertise in that. Chesterton would have been better at that, because he's a generalist. It's all about being well-rounded. Whereas if you get too specialized, then you have a problem when you dip outside of your field. And I think we see that problem with actors. A lot of times we hold up a celebrity who is, probably very good at acting or singing or whatever their craft is, and then all of a sudden they start giving political advice, and you can tell that this is not working, because all of a sudden they don't have, they're working outside of their specialized expertise. And so that's really a good thing to look at in Chesterton, which is being well-rounded. And that's what we try to do at Chesterton Academy, at all the Chesterton schools. So yeah.
Well, thanks God, because most sane people know that they should avoid doctors. We are a nuisance. You never want to go and see them, and that's okay with me.
That's very nice.
That you never want to. It's like going to the dentist. Sorry about the ones who are watching and hearing which are dentists, but you never want to go there as an appointment, and you should not. So
I can't imagine people won't want to see you, though.
Well, not about the medical stuff. I don't know. But
so Chesterton talks about how we should think things that should be thought, and then how does that lead into your third point?
So through thinking, we start getting to a well-rounded truth, and because in the healthcare, at least, when we threaten people with hell, we are not giving them any ideal. And that's the difference between, the spiritual hell. We have a heaven, but there's no ideal. And we start seeing things that are out of scope of the medicine. And through getting to a wider truth, like, why kill us or whatever, we start seeing that the truth has more than the thing we're thinking. It's more than prevention. It's more than there's value, there's freedom, there is, the glorious life. And Chesterton uses the test of imagination actually to teach us to feel things as they should be received, that they should be felt. And that's how we should feel about things, is the joy, appreciation of them. Because with the test of the imagination, Chesterton teaches that things could not have been. And one of the things he does, which actually took me 10 years to be thinking about it, is the test of the imagination, which actually is about, Chesterton makes a distinction between the facts that are necessary and rational and inevitable from the facts that have been associated by mere repetition. And he says you cannot imagine 2 and 1 not making 3, but you can easily imagine trees growing golden candlesticks or tigers hanging by the tail. And by this explanation, by this distinction, he smashes the whole idea of a predictable world. So now everything could have been, because everything which does not attack mere logic is just associated by repetition. So, and he says there's no logical connection between flying and laying eggs. So a bird could have been, he could have not laid eggs. I don't know, maybe a bird could have been born from an egg, because there's not a logical, and he says there's not logical connection between flying, laying eggs. And everything could have been different. So if everything could have been different and things are as they are, thus everything has been saved from a wreck.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's you're demonstrating the difference between a law in math and a law in science. A law in math is unbreakable unless you take issue with the assumptions, because the logic is sound, or is valid rather. But in science, a law is just a law because we've seen it a lot of times. That's what makes it a law. Because there's no reason why on the million and first time, the apple doesn't fly up when it falls off the tree. It just can, so we've just seen it fall so many times to the ground that we have a law that we call gravity. And we figured out the gravitational acceleration and everything, but it could be different, and there's no reason it couldn't be different. And in fact, a lot of these laws all of a sudden don't become laws when you look closer at quantum physics, and all of a sudden, hey, your principles about how objects move aren't true anymore. It's only true some of the times, and it's not even true for large objects. So that's the issue, is even your own laws start to break down. They're just good guidelines all of a sudden. So yeah, no, it's true. I mean, that's not to discount science or discount laws, but it's more for a helpful purpose. It's not a religion. It's not supposed to be, adhered to religiously.
It doesn't go against reason, because if you can imagine things differently, things not falling and floating, instead of, you throw an apple in the face of someone you don't like, and you can imagine that apple stopping in the middle, then it might have been. Yep. It doesn't go against logic. So, and that's what Chesterton talks, everyone, and he says, like every man is a great might not have been. Everything could have been different. Even the world, the grass could have been green, could have been blue, and instead of chlorophyll, it would have, blurophile. So it isn't. He doesn't sort of says that things are not how they are, but he says that things could have been different, and he rejoices in the thing being how they are for the reason that things are, and seeing alternatives of how things could have been. He sees something very personal in the world, and and that's how all these principles, feeling things how they could have been, that everything could have been different, everything could have been lost, and that a lot of things we have might be lost. You start appreciating appreciating them. And that's what we did, at least in my medical class, So I came up with something thanks to Joseph Pierce, actually, who made an
Nice.
assignment to me like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And
cool. Yeah, and it makes sense that Chesterton concludes by saying thanks is the highest form of thought. And you talk about appreciating life, appreciating what God has created, and it's being thankful. And
exactly. And with the test of the imagination, you can also play in the medical field. So what I came up with was, my students, and it's an activity called, I did to all my medical students about, in search of your inner bacteria. So you have to imagine yourself as a bacteria and choose the site of infection and choose your tools and how you're going to avoid the immune system. And actually, you can make a flying bacteria if you want. But the thing is that it has to be consistent with a bacteria. So they have to, I'm going to grade the whole thing about how, the logic of it. If you're going to fly, just tell me how you're going to do it. I don't mind. So these are undiscovered ones.
That's really fun. Wow. We talked about doing an art class, and I'm interested in doing that because because Virginia is very good again at art, but as you can tell, I mean, she's just very, very educated I'm glad you could carry the conversation about medical stuff, because that is, I could not be worse at biology, honestly. and
well, you never know. Just connect it with something else, and then you're going to have your own, I don't know, Covey or I don't know what you
yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure I could, if you made it entertaining, like it sounds like you do, I maybe could learn something. But yes, thank you so much for delivering this material, Virginia, and coming on the podcast. And remember, everyone, to sign up for the conference, register for the conference at chesterton.org/conference, and also become a member. You can also go to chesterton.org to become a member and watch Virginia's talk, because we have the virtual society recordings on the member dashboard. So you can go, and Virginia gives a talk and she shows pictures that she made during the talk in a slideshow. So it's really great. But yeah, thank you so much, Virginia. And thank you all for listening. Until next time, help us to make uncommon sense more common.